Before we begin today's assembly, have a think a bit. What do all these famous people have in common? Well, every one of them is on the autistic spectrum. You might well recognize some of the faces on the screen. These are clever, academic people, all people who have strived to rise above everybody else and become the best at what they do. But what does autism, or being on the autistic spectrum, actually mean? Well, being on the autistic spectrum is so common, the ways people behave vary so widely, that it's very hard to describe what a person with ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, might actually be like. Everyone, just like everybody on the planet, is unique. Not everyone with ASD is a maths or science genius like the people in the pictures we've already seen, like Einstein, for example. Just like not everyone with ASD isn't a genius. However, there are a few common traits that people diagnosed with ASD tend to share. Now let's take a look at a short video describing what it might be like to have autism and see through an autistic person's eyes.
Every second of every day, your brain is choosing what to ignore and what to pay attention to. But we all hear, see, and every second of every day, your brain is choosing what to ignore and what to pay attention to. But we all hear, see, and feel the world in different ways. There's one condition, though, that really impacts how you communicate with people around you and sense the world. It affects over 1 in 100 people, and it's called autism spectrum disorder, or autism for short.
This is Alex. He's 10 and he has autism.
So Alex, if you have to explain to people what it's like for you having autism, what do you say?
It can cause me a lot of difficulties in day-to-day life because I absolutely loathe crowds in busy areas and people brushing past me.
Someone with autism is on the autism spectrum. This is like a scale, and different people are affected in different ways.
We've come to the park and set up an experiment to demonstrate how Alex's autism affects his senses. What I've done is I've labelled the faders, which are like the volume knobs, with different sounds. And these are all the sounds we can hear around us. And when you're talking, I know there's a bit of traffic, there's some birds singing, I can hear the kids playing over there in the playground, there's a dog barking. But mainly, I can hear you, and my brain can just turn all these other sounds off. Can you show me maybe what it's like for you?
I don't have as much control over it, so I'll just read them all up there. But then I won't be able to block those out a little bit. But I can't block them out anywhere near as much as you did.
Being overloaded with all this sensory information can lead to something called a meltdown.
What's it like when you're having a meltdown in your head?
Well, I just really kind of upset and angry and I suppose distressed, and then I'm really not calm.
Although autism can be disorientating and confusing, some autistic people are able to concentrate incredibly well on something they love. And for Alex, that's filmmaking.
We've come to the Autism Show in Manchester. With us are some of Alex's friends who often act in his films. What do you think it is about autism and directing films that those two things work quite well together?
Focusing on one task that he's doing at once. Yeah, he's very focused and a lot of the time has better ideas than us.
To help Alex's friends understand what it can be like to have autism, we're giving them these virtual reality goggles and headphones which will play an autism simulation.
Why don't you try it?
Do you know, I've never tried virtual reality before. I can hear every single noise in this room, and the light is very dazzling. And I can't focus on the thing I think I need to be paying attention to is this lady who's telling me to wait, but I can't understand what she's saying. Wow! What did you think of it, Jacob?
It was really intense of what was going to happen next. It's very overwhelming. Like,
you can't concentrate on one thing because there's just so much going on.
I thought it explained to me a lot more about how being autistic is, and it was kind of stressful.
You might know someone with autism, you may have autism yourself, but even if you do, it can be very hard to know what other people with autism are going through. There are a few things you can do to help. You can give people time, you can speak really clearly, and you can remember that someone with autism may be experiencing the world in a more stressful way. Most importantly, autism isn't the main thing about anybody. People on the
Although it's really interesting there how different Alex's world is to mine. He gets bombarded by all the things that I look around me at the moment and almost take for granted. I can choose to tune in or tune out of different sights and sounds that I want to focus my attention on. It's amazing that Alex has to go through such a bombardment of the senses each and every day and has to apply a lot more concentration to filter out all the things that may not be as necessary for him to pay attention to. One interesting fact about people with autism is that they can be so different from each other that two conditions used to be diagnosed for this: autism and Asperger's syndrome. We now recognise these two just different shades of autism, but they're all on the same spectrum. Now, the people with autism represent 1% of the entire world's population. That may seem like a small amount, but when you think how many people that actually is, it's no surprise to learn there's probably some with autism that you know and probably know quite well. One thing we do know is that for many years now, the amount of people being diagnosed as being on the autistic spectrum is rising. This is most likely because, with greater awareness, more cases are being reported. People are simply more aware of autism, and so reporting or self-diagnosing or going to their doctors much more often now than they did, as you can see, in the 1990s. There are currently more than 700,000 people in the UK with an ASD diagnosis. This number is rising daily. Many people on the autistic spectrum see the world in different ways. You're not sure how this is possible? What do you see in the following picture? Is it a rabbit? Or is it a duck? As you can see, there's different ways of looking at this picture with two very different interpretations. In real life, you'd never confuse a rabbit with a duck. But when you look at a picture like this, it's very easy to come to one or both conclusions. It is because of the ability of people with ASD to see things differently that we have some of our world's greatest achievements. For example, the theory of relativity was dreamed up by Einstein. And of course, the theory of evolution was Darwin's creation. Just because you might be diagnosed with ASD does not mean you should set a ceiling on your expectations for what you can achieve. An interesting fact about people with ASD is that many of them are non-verbal or take longer than other children to learn to talk. Einstein didn't speak a word until he was 5. Well, we know how that turned out later in life. So why are we talking about ASD or the autistic spectrum today? In our school, we all know someone on the autistic spectrum. You may be yourself. This doesn't mean that we need to treat people with ASD very differently or make a big deal about it. However, it's important to be aware that ASD exists and can mean that some people act differently or may want to be helped in different ways to others. Of course, they may not need or want any help at all. However, it's natural to want to be considerate to people's needs. Usually we say, treat others how you would like to be treated. But people with autism might not always want to be treated the same way as someone else does. Not sure if they want the ball thrown at them or to join in with the game? Well, ask them first. After all, it is the right thing to do, if you're unsure of someone's reaction, to check it with them to make sure it's okay to continue what you're doing. The important thing is that we're all valued as part of the school community and we all respect each other. You've already had many assemblies on that, and this is just another example of where prejudice can get in the way of actual success from each and every student.